So now we will discuss about the spontaneous process. Okay, what is the meaning of spontaneous? The process which is irreversible. Okay, to understand this, consider the example of a hot cup of tea. Okay, if you have taken a hot cup of tea, what will happen? After some time, all its heat energy which is possessed by a hot cup of tea, it will release its amount of heat to the surrounding and it will become cold. Okay, it will acquire the normal atmospheric जो temperature है उस liquid के लिए वो उतना acquire कर लेगा and the amount of heat will get released. बराबर है? तो कैन वी गेन दिस अमाउंट ऑफ हीट? ओके, जो इस कप ऑफ टी ने हीट लूज किया सराउंडिंग को, वो ऑटोमेटिकली गेन हो सकता है क्या? वो गेन हो सकता है क्या? नहीं हो सकता. समझ में आया ना आप लोगों को? एग्जांपल के लिए मैंने बताया, अ कप ऑफ टी, इफ यू हैव टेकन, ओके, हॉट कप ऑफ टी. ओके, so this is a hot cup of tea. What will happen? It will lose its temperature. It will lose its temperature after certain time. बराबर है? If it is a hot cup of tea. Okay, so after certain time it will lose its temperature and it will acquire room temperature. It will acquire a room temperature. Room में जो जितना भी temperature initially वो ज़्यादा temperature पे होगा. Okay, more than room temperature. But after certain time it will lose its temperature and after losing its temperature it will acquire a normal room temperature. Okay, so can, the question is, can it will regain the same temperature? वो regain कर सकता है क्या temperature automatically? Automatically it is not possible. Automatically it cannot regain its temperature. Means what is that? ये process क्या है? The process is irreversible. The process is right now spontaneous. The process is what? Spontaneous. That it is a irreversible. The process cannot carried out in a reverse direction. Okay, जो हीट थी इस कप ऑफ टी में वो क्या होगी? एटमॉस्फेयर में चलेगी. वो ऑटोमेटिकली रीगेन नहीं हो सकती बिकॉज इट इज अ लॉ of a temperature that the temperature will always flow from higher side to the lower side. Already हम लोगों ने ये डिस्कस किया हुआ है. Okay, in the same way fluid, any liquid will flow from higher potential energy to lower potential energy. बराबर है? lower higher height to lower height में ही क्या होता है? fluid or any liquid is generally flow. Okay, flow takes place. So that process is what called as the irreversible process, जो रिवर्स डायरेक्शन में नहीं जा सकता. जो क्या हो सकता है? रिवर्स डायरेक्शन में नहीं जा सकता है. द अमाउंट ऑफ हीट, द अमाउंट ऑफ टेम्परेचर, द अमाउंट ऑफ हीट that is Q, which is released by this hot cup of tea to the surrounding, it cannot, it cannot regain, it cannot regain that amount of heat which is released to the surrounding, and such process are called as the irreversible process. Okay, irreversible process. Such process are called as a spontaneous process. Such process is called as the spontaneous process. Okay, so we'll understand the spontaneous process have a natural tendency. These have a natural tendency to occur and do not require any external influence. Okay, external influence for their occurrence. इसके लिए कुछ external influence चाहिए क्या? कुछ external force लगाया क्या हम लोगों ने? नहीं. A normal hot cup of tea, when it is kept in an atmosphere, it will lose its amount of heat to the surrounding. Okay, there is no any external force is applied over here. बराबर है? And the amount of heat which is released to the surrounding, it will be unable, it cannot be regained that amount of heat in that hot cup of tea, and this process is called as the spontaneous or a irreversible process. So we'll understand, this was a general example. Now we will understand with the help of the examples of the chemicals. Okay, so consider the reactions. Okay, consider the reaction between the aqueous NaOH and HCl solution. Okay, consider the example, first example between aqueous NaOH and HCl solution. When they mix together, we'll write the reaction NaOH in the aqueous state. When it reacts with HCl, hydrochloric acid, in the aqueous state. Okay, so spontaneously, okay, spontaneously immediately it combines with HCl to form NaCl. देखो क्या फॉर्म करता है, ऑलरेडी इक्वेशन लिखा होगा हम लोगों ने कभी. So it will form sodium chloride in aqueous state and H2O. Okay, H2O in the liquid state, and during this the delta RH naught, during this the enthalpy change during this reaction is minus 57, minus 57 kilojoule. Okay, so look at this. When aqueous NaOH reacts with aqueous HCl, immediately spontaneously it forms the sodium chloride and water H2O in a liquid state, and during this the chemical the enthalpy change during this reaction is minus 57 kilojoule. Okay, so this is the process is what? Spontaneous process. Process is what? The spontaneous process. For no external force or energy is required for the reaction to occur, and this is a spontaneous. The process stops. Okay, ये process, this reaction is what? Spontaneous reaction. Okay, this reaction is spontaneous reaction. The process when NaOH in aqueous solution will react with HCl, immediately it forms NaCl. तब तक ये फॉर्म करेगा सोडियम क्लोराइड जब तक ये HCl और NaOH एग्जॉस्ट नहीं हो जाता, खत्म नहीं हो जाता. बराबर है, ये सोडियम क्लोराइड फॉर्म करेगा. ओके, सो this is a process, okay, spontaneous process, and NaCl is dissolved in water. Okay, if NaCl is dissolved in water, it does not react with water to produce NaOH. अगर हम लोग बोले कि ये जो सोडियम क्लोराइड है, ओके, सोडियम क्लोराइड है, अगर इसको हमने रिएक्ट किया किसके साथ? H2O के साथ, तो ये फॉर्म करता है क्या? सोडियम क्लोराइड और सोडियम हाइड्रोक्साइड और हाइड्रोक्लोरिक एसिड नहीं फॉर्म करता है, HCl नहीं फॉर्म करता है. ओके, सो दिस प्रोसेस of combining NaOH with HCl to form sodium chloride, this process is a spontaneous process. This process is a spontaneous process. Okay, spontaneous process. But when this NaCl when combines with H2O, okay, it will not combines with H2O to form NaOH or HCl. Okay, ये पता होना चाहिए आप लोगों को. So NaCl is dissolved in water. It does not react with water to produce NaOH and HCl. Second example we will see. Second example, that water always flows from higher level to the lower level. Okay, if we'll take the example of water, अभी just मैंने बताया था आप लोगों को, that heat always flow from higher temperature region to the lower temperature region, and water it always flow from, okay, water always it always flows from higher level, from higher level to higher level to lower level. बराबर है ना? Lower level में बराबर है. Water when in a rainy season, water from hill region, okay, it flows down from higher level to the lower level. Okay, lower level में जहाँ पे suppose river है कुछ situated है, वहाँ पे क्या होता है? पानी जमा होता है. बराबर है. So water it will always flow from higher level to lower level without any external force. बराबर है ना? किसी फोर्स, कोई फोर्स होता है क्या? नहीं. Okay, so without applying any external force, so without applying, without any external force, any external force, without any external force, it flows from higher level to lower level. What is this process? This is spontaneous process. वो ऑटोमेटिकली हो सकता है क्या कि पानी नीचे वाली लेवल से ऊपर वाली लेवल तक ऑटोमेटिकली चला जाए without any external force? Not possible. Okay, so we can say that these are what? Irreversible process. Okay, then third, ice melts spontaneously. Okay, so melting of ice. Okay, or we will write ice melts, okay, spontaneously above 0 डिग्री सेल्सियस. 0 डिग्री सेल्सियस. ओके, सो 0 डिग्री सेल्सियस के अबाव हम लोग जैसे टेम्परेचर देते हैं आइस को, इट स्टार्ट्स मेल्टिंग, it starts converting into liquid. बराबर है. So what is this process? This process is what? A spontaneous process. It is a irreversible process. So it cannot means without any external force. Okay, the process is what? रिवर्स नहीं हो सकती. Okay, so the process is what? Irreversible process. That melting of ice, okay, above 0 degree Celsius, okay, is a spontaneous process. Hot cup of tea, जो example already मैंने दे दिया है. Okay, hot cup of tea, okay, placed in a room, cools down, releasing heat to the surrounding. So hot cup of tea, hot cup of tea. When a hot cup of tea is kept, okay, in a room, when it is kept in a normal room, what happens? It releases heat from to the surrounding. It releasing heat to the surrounding. So it release heat to surrounding. Okay, release heat to the surrounding. So during all this process, during all these examples, okay, whatever we have written, first case, that when sodium hydroxide in aqueous solution and hydrochloric acid in its aqueous solution reacts, they form a sodium chloride. Okay, and they form a sodium chloride. The process is what? Very spontaneous process. The process is irreversible process. The process is what? Irreversible process. Means we cannot say that sodium chloride when reacts with H2O, it will give NaOH and HCl. Nahi. Okay, this will not possible. Okay, this will not possible that when sodium chloride reacts with water, it will give NaOH and HCl. No. Okay, so because the process is irreversible, because the process is irreversible, because the process is spontaneous. Water always flows from higher level to the lower level. Okay, without any external force. बराबर है. This also is the irreversible process. Irreversible process है. बराबर है. And ice also melts spontaneously, okay, irreversibly above 0 degree Celsius. Okay, ऐसा नहीं होता है कि about 0 degree Celsius वो क्या हो जाता है, फिर से आइस फॉर्म होता है क्या? नहीं फॉर्म होता है. Okay, so irreversible process. So all these are the irreversible process in which, okay, in which what you will observe, that it occurs of its own and does not require any external agency. So during all these cases, we will write down the key points of spontaneous process, key points of this spontaneous process. What are the key points of this spontaneous process? That when this spontaneous process will take place, okay, spontaneous process, it occurs its own. Okay, so what is that? This process, they occurs, this process they occurs, okay, by its own. Okay, they occurs of its own. कुछ एक्सटर्नल फोर्स लगा क्या यहाँ पे? कुछ एक्सटर्नल फोर्स लगा क्या? ऑल इन ऑल दिस एग्जांपल, अ हॉट कप ऑफ टी व्हेन डायरेक्टली केप्ट इन नॉर्मल रूम में जब रखते हैं तो इट रिलीज अ हीट टू द सराउंडिंग. कुछ एक्सटर्नल फोर्स लगता है कि यहाँ पे? नहीं. देयर इज नो एनी एक्सटर्नल थिंग, इज देयर इज नो एनी एक्सटर्नल एजेंट, देयर इज नो एनी एक्सटर्नल फोर्स इज रिक्वायर्ड for all these cases. Okay, so it occurs of its own and does not require any external agency to occur. Okay, so it does not require external agency. External agency means what? External force. It does not require any external agency. It does not require any external force, okay, to carry out this process. Then second is, it proceeds in one direction and cannot take place in opposite direction. Okay, so the process is what? Unidirectional. Unidirectional, एक ही डायरेक्शन में होती है, and it cannot be reversed. Okay, it cannot be reversed. Okay, it cannot be reversed. इसको हम लोग रिवर्स नहीं कर सकते. जैसे यहाँ पे देखो, can we reverse this reaction? We cannot reverse this reaction. So this is the second key point. Third key point, that the spontaneous process can be rapid. Okay, can be rapid or slow, or spontaneity is not concerned. This is not concerned with the rate of reaction. Okay, so spontaneous process can be rapid or slow. Okay, it can be, this process can be रैपिड भी हो सकती है, दिस प्रोसेस कैन बी स्लो. समझ में आया? ये प्रोसेस जो है वो स्लो भी हो सकती है या फास्ट भी हो सकती है. ओके, बट दिस विल बी irreversible. This will be irreversible. And the last point, the spontaneous process, the process continues till equilibrium is reached. Okay, so the fourth condition is what? This process continues, this process continues, this process continues till equilibrium is reached, जब तक equilibrium reach नहीं होता, okay, till equilibrium is reached, till equilibrium is reached, जब तक equilibrium reach नहीं होता, okay, consider करते हैं example हम लोग a hot cup of tea, hot cup of tea when it is kept in a room, क्या होता है जब तक इसके जो अंदर में जो हीट है, ओके, हॉट कप ऑफ टी, जो टी में अंदर में जो हीट है, जब तक वो हीट कंप्लीटली रिलीज नहीं होती सराउंडिंग में, ओके, और मैंने पहले ही बोला है जब तक इसकी जो हीट है कप ऑफ टी की नॉर्मल रूम टेम्परेचर पे नहीं आती, तब तक क्या होता रहेगा, इट विल रिलीज इट्स अमाउंट ऑफ हीट टू द सराउंडिंग, वो क्या करते रहेगा, कंटिन्यूसली हीट रिलीज करते रहेगा, हॉट कप ऑफ टी व्हेन इट इज केप्ट इन अ नॉर्मल रूम, it will release its amount of heat till it will not reach the equilibrium condition, जब तक वो equilibrium condition में नहीं होता, जब तक उसकी जो amount of heat है वो सराउंडिंग को completely नहीं पहुंचती, और जो एटमॉस्फेयर में जो टेम्परेचर है और जो टी का जो टेम्परेचर है वो दोनों भी बैलेंस नहीं होता, तब तक क्या होते रहेगा, इट विल रिलीज इट्स अमाउंट ऑफ हीट, ओके, so these are the key points of the spontaneous process, that it will occur by its own, it does not require any external agency, it will does not require any external force, it is unidirectional, it takes place in one direction, that it does not it cannot reverse its direction, it cannot reverse its direction, okay, uski direction reverse nahi kar sakta wo, okay, and it can be rapid or slow, the process can be, this spontaneous process can be slow ho sakti hai, rapid ho sakti hai, fast ho sakti hai, but the process is irreversible, and the last one, the process continues till it reaches its equilibrium condition, so the spontaneous or natural process tend to occur in a direction that leads to the equilibrium, okay, जैसे भी हम लोगों ने देखा ये वाला एग्जांपल a hot cup of tea, okay, so till जब तक यहाँ पे उसका इक्विलिब्रियम कंडीशन मेंटेन नहीं होता, तब तक क्या होते रहेगा, हीट सराउंडिंग को जाते रहेगा, और जैसे ही दोनों का इक्विलिब्रियम कंडीशन मेंटेन हो गया, दैट टाइम इट विल स्टॉप, it will stop this process, it will stop this process, okay, and it will stop releasing heat to the surrounding when the equilibrium is reached, जैसे equilibrium आ गए यहाँ पे उस प्रोसेस में, वैसे ही वो क्या हो जाएगा, प्रोसेस स्टॉप हो जाएगा, so this is about the spontaneous process. Now we'll see the energy and the spontaneity, okay, energy and spontaneity देखेंगे हम लोग कि spontaneity and energy क्या होती है, okay, so right, spontan energy and spontaneity, energy and spontaneity. So spontaneous process, you will have to remember what spontaneous process means, what the irreversible process, okay, that you have to remember, okay, वो एक word बहुत important है, so by that single word one can easily understand what is the process completely, okay, irreversible process जो reverse direction में नहीं जा सकती, okay, जो reverse direction में नहीं जा सकती, so now we'll write about energy and spontaneity, energy, okay, energy, so today we'll take this last topic, energy and spontaneity, spontaneity, okay, energy and spontaneity we'll discuss about, okay, energy and spontaneity. So the spontaneous reaction takes place in a direction in which energy of the system is lowered, okay, spontaneous जो reaction है, irreversible reaction है, वो generally होता है, carry out होता है, in which energy of a system is lowered, okay, it is accompanied by release of energy, okay, suppose we are considering that the release of energy, okay, release of energy, okay, it is accompanied by a release of energy, so consider the example, the reaction between NaOH and HCl is exothermic, okay, हमने अभी just देखा हुआ है reaction, we'll once again write down that reaction, NaOH in a aqueous state plus hydrochloric acid HCl in its aqueous state, when they react they form NaCl, okay, solid state, and H2O, okay, H2O in a liquid state, and during this process the change in the enthalpy delta RH naught is minus 57 kilojoule. Already we have written this. Okay, लिखा हुआ है हम लोगों ने that the NaCl, yes, yeah, this is sodium chloride NaCl, yes, aqueous state में ना, yes, solid state में, aqueous state में लिखते हैं हम लोग. So NaOH in aqueous state when reacts with HCl, okay, it forms sodium chloride plus H2 and during this the change in enthalpy is minus 57 kilojoule. अभी आप देख सकते हो इसमें what is the meaning of this minus 57 kilojoule? What is the meaning of this? It is the meaning is the energy, the amount of energy, the amount of enthalpy is decreasing. Okay, means what? The amount of energy is released to the surrounding. When energy is released to the surrounding, that time sign convention आप लोगों को पता है क्या आता है, माइनस आता है. So this minus is indicating what? The amount of energy is released to the surrounding. समझ में आया? हीट रिलीज कहाँ पे हो रही है, एनर्जी रिलीज कहाँ पे हो रही है, एनर्जी इज रिलीजिंग टू द surrounding. So they are considering that right now they are considering that whenever energy is released to the surrounding means which reaction it is. Right now which reaction it is? कौन सी रिएक्शन है ये वाली, एंडोथर्मिक है या एक्सोथर्मिक है? So we will say that the energy is released, minus sign है, is released to the surrounding means what? The suppose this reaction is exothermic reaction. समझ में आया ना? ये रिएक्शन क्या हो जाएगी? Exothermic reaction. It will release the amount of heat to the surrounding. So what they are saying that the reaction between NaOH and HCl is a exothermic. How we are understanding this reaction is a exothermic reaction? Because the amount of energy is what? Released. Okay, the amount of energy is released to the surrounding and surrounding में release होने के कारण, okay, system से surrounding में release हीट जा रही है तो हम लोग किससे इंडिकेट करते हैं, माइनस से इंडिकेट करते हैं. एंड दैट्स व्हाई द एंथैल्पी चेंज जो हो रहा है यहाँ पे वो क्या हो रहा है, माइनस में आ रहा है. क्यों माइनस में आ रहा है? क्योंकि एनर्जी, सिस्टम की एनर्जी बाहर जा रही है, कहाँ पे, सराउंडिंग में. एंड दैट्स व्हाई ओके दीज रिएक्शंस आर व्हाट, एक्सोथर्मिक रिएक्शंस. एक्सोथर्मिक रिएक्शन में क्या होता है, हीट रिलीज होती है सराउंडिंग में. ओके आपको हीट आप वो ऑब्जर्व कर सकते हो. ओके सो दिस रिएक्शन इज व्हाट, एक्सोथर्मिक. इट इज बेस्ड ऑन दिस माइनस साइन. So the spontaneity of a reaction, is it based on exothermic? It is based on its nature, that is exothermic reaction, that we have to identify. समझ में अभी what we have to check that in this reaction, in this given reaction, right now this reaction is exothermic reaction. Okay, change in enthalpy during this reaction is minus 57 means amount of energy is released to the surrounding में heat release हो गई है. And is it the only condition which is satisfying for the spontaneity? Is it the only condition exothermic? ये condition है क्या किसके लिए कि वो प्रोसेस क्या है, spontaneous प्रोसेस है, वो चेक करना है हमें. Okay, that we have to check. Okay, so the reaction between NaOH and HCl is exothermic and during which the change in enthalpy is minus 57 kilojoule and is a spontaneous. But if we take the example of the example of ice, okay, when ice melts, it melts spontaneously. When ice melts spontaneously, तब क्या हुआ, when ice melts spontaneously above 0 degree Celsius. Okay, look at this example. Okay, look at this example. When ice is melting spontaneously, irreversibly above 0 degree Celsius, यानी क्या हो रहा है, आइस अगर जब मेल्ट कर रहा, आइस मेल्ट हो रहा है, when ice in its solid state, when it is melting, जब ये मेल्ट हो जाएगा, ओके मेल्ट हो जाएगा यानी वाटर में कन्वर्ट हो जाएगा, वाटर में यानी क्या हो जाएगा, लिक्विड में कन्वर्ट हो जाएगा. कब, when it is above 0 degree Celsius, when it is above 0 degree Celsius में हम लोग जब इसको हीट करेंगे, बराबर है ना. सो मीन्स व्हाट प्रोसेस इट इज, कौन सी प्रोसेस है ये वाली, एंडोथर्मिक है या एक्सोथर्मिक है, इट इज एब्सॉर्बिंग हीट, बराबर है ना. आइस क्या कर रहा है यहाँ पे, आइस इज एब्सॉर्बिंग हीट. ओके और ये हीट कहाँ से एब्सॉर्ब कर रहा है, सराउंडिंग से हीट एब्सॉर्ब कर रहा है. एंड यू नो व्हेन द सब्सटेंस इज एब्सॉर्बिंग, व्हेन द रिएक्टेंट इज एब्सॉर्बिंग हीट, Is it endothermic or exothermic? It is a endothermic reaction. The reaction is what? Endothermic reaction. तो आप देख सकते हो both this reaction as well as this process, both are a spontaneous process, but this reaction is an exothermic reaction, and right now this process melting of ice above 0 degrees Celsius is what? Endothermic reaction, endothermic process. So we cannot say that. Okay, जो मैंने question पूछा था that only this exothermicity is explaining about the spontaneity. No, समझ में आया उसका आंसर क्या है? No, that we cannot predict the reaction is or the process is spontaneous है या नहीं है based on their exothermic or their endothermic nature से हम लोग identify नहीं कर सकते. Okay, so what we have seen here right now, for both these two cases, okay, for both these two cases these process are spontaneous process. This process are spontaneous process. Okay, this process are spontaneous process. दोनों भी process क्या है? Spontaneous process है, but first reaction है exothermic है और जो second जो है वो कौन सी है? Endothermic है. So on the basis of exothermic and endothermic, we cannot predict, we cannot define the spontaneous nature, the spontaneous process, okay, spontaneous or irreversibility of the process. Second example लेते हैं. Suppose NaCl, okay, NaCl dissolves spontaneously in water. Okay, second next example लेते हैं that NaCl, sodium chloride, if it is dissolves, okay, if it is dissolves in water spontaneously, okay, water spontaneously in water with the absorption of heat from surrounding, the reaction is written like this: NaCl, okay, NaCl in its solid state, it dissolves in aqueous solution, that is in water, it forms Na plus ions, okay, in its aqueous form, and it forms Cl minus ions in its aqueous form, and during which the change in enthalpy during this, okay, change in enthalpy during this is plus 3.9 kilojoule per mole, kilojoule per mole. Okay, so kilojoule per mole है, per mole equation है ये वाली. So when sodium chloride dissolves in water, the amount of enthalpy change during this reaction is 3.9 kilojoule per mole. And what this plus sign is indicating? Plus sign indicate क्या कर रहा है यहाँ पे? So it is absorbing heat. Okay, it is absorbing heat from the surrounding. It is absorbing. It is, this plus sign is indicating absorbing heat. Okay, from surrounding, from surrounding. This is absorbing heat from the surrounding. Look at this verse again. Minus sign is indicating what? The amount of heat is released to the surrounding. Plus sign is indicating what? Amount of heat is absorbing to the system. Okay, means absorbing heat from the system. System से heat क्या, surrounding से heat क्या कर रहा है ये? Heat absorb कर रहा है, heat add हो रहा है. So energy of the system will increase, and that is why it is indicated with plus sign. Okay, समझ में आप लोगों को? So in all this process, these are endothermic and spontaneous. Okay, so ये भी है क्या, ये भी क्या है? एंडोथर्मिक है ये वाली, बराबर है, एंडोथर्मिक है, एंडोथर्मिक प्रोसेस है ये वाली. दिस इज एंडोथर्मिक प्रोसेस. Okay, so now look at this very first reaction, it is a exothermic process, second is a endothermic process, third one is also endothermic process. So on a basis of exothermic or endothermic, we cannot define the spontaneity of the process. Okay, so there are various parameters, that the other parameters, okay, that we will study. So these are endothermic and spontaneous. So it is therefore clear that exothermicity is not the sufficient criteria for deciding of spontaneity. There needs to be another factor to describe the spontaneity. समझ में आया सब लोगों को? So in this topic, energy and spontaneity, what we have understood, this energy is released to the surrounding, energy is absorbed from the surrounding, energy is absorbed from the surrounding. That's why this reaction is endothermic, endothermic process, endothermic process, and this process in which heat is released to the surrounding is exothermic process. Okay, so only this criteria, that whether the process is exothermic or whether the process is endothermic, is not going to decide the spontaneity of the process. समझ में आया? Spontaneity of the process, this the process exothermic or endothermic will not decide the spontaneity of the process. Okay, so there are other factors that they will decide the spontaneity of the process, and what are they, we will understand in our next lecture. समझ में आया आप लोगों को? वो कौन से प्रोसेस है, वो कौन से क्राइटेरिया है that are deciding the spontaneity of the process, that we will study in a next lecture.